When words produce reality, greed, language, and the Marxian critique of thought. The most important insight from which a serious critique of language must begin is this: words do not merely describe thought, they organize it. The vocabulary through which we interpret the world is not a neutral instrument passively reflecting reality. It actively structures the field of what can be perceived, distinguished, questioned, and ultimately understood. A society's conceptual language does not simply communicate experience after the fact, it participates in the production of experience itself. Take the word greed. In ordinary discourse, greed appears as a simple moral defect, an excess of desire, a personal failure of restraint. The term seems self-evident, almost natural, but this apparent simplicity conceals an extraordinary compression of distinct historical, psychological, and structural phenomena into a single moral category. The word does not merely identify a behavior, it frames the entire intelligibility of the phenomenon. To speak only of greed is already to individualize the problem. It directs attention toward character, morality, temperament, and vice. It encourages us to imagine social disorder as the aggregate result of defective individuals rather than as the expression of historically produced relations and systematic imperatives. In this sense, language does not merely interpret social reality, it distributes causality within it. This is precisely where the Marxian lexicon becomes philosophically decisive. Marx does not simply replace one moral judgment with another, he decomposes the apparent unity of the concept itself. What common language names greed, Marxian analysis redistributes into a constellation of more precise categories: commodity fetishism, compulsive accumulation, expanded reproduction, false needs, exploitative appropriation. Each concept isolates a distinct mechanism concealed within the moral vagueness of the original term. The concept of commodity fetishism, for example, reveals that what appears as irrational attachment to wealth is not simply an individual obsession, but a socially produced inversion in which human relations present themselves as a relation between things. The problem is no longer reducible to avaricious personality. It becomes intelligible as a form of perception generated by the structure of exchange itself. Likewise, the notion of compulsive accumulation shifts the explanatory center entirely. What common morality interprets as excessive desire is revealed instead as a systematic necessity internal to capital. Under such conditions, accumulation is not merely permitted but required. Expansion ceases to be psychological and becomes structural. This transformation of vocabulary produces a transformation of thought. Once the phenomenon is redescribed through historical and material categories rather than moral abstractions, new forms of intelligibility become possible. One no longer asks merely why individuals desire excessively, but why a social order continuously reproduces desires that cannot be satisfied except through perpetual expansion. And this is the decisive point. Conceptual clarification is never merely semantic. It is political and epistemological at the same time. If the categories through which we understand social life are historical constructions rather than natural givens, then they are neither eternal nor immutable. They can be criticized because they were produced. And because they were produced, they can in principle be transformed. The struggle over language is therefore not secondary to the struggle over reality. It is one of its primary terrain. A civilization that possesses only moral vocabulary for structural phenomena will remain trapped within moral explanation for systemic processes. Precision of language becomes, under such conditions, a condition of intellectual emancipation. Clarity does not emerge from simplification, it emerges from conceptual differentiation. And every genuine act of thought begins when language ceases to conceal distinctions and begin to reveal them. Now, if these questions interest you, if you want to understand not only what Marxism says, but how it transforms the very way we interpret society, power, labor, ideology, and human experience, then you might find my book, Exploring Marxism, a valuable companion. Rather than reducing Marxism to slogans or political caricatures, the book explores it as a living intellectual framework, a method for reading the structures hidden beneath everyday reality, including the language through which the reality is constructed. Exploring Marxism is available on Amazon. Thank you for watching.